What would you do if someone mocked and even kicked a guide dog? A lifeline for a blind person. Now imagine if that dog wasn't just any guide dog, but a highly trained former canine with an incredible past. In today's video, we'll dive into a shocking incident where a motorcyclist underestimated a guide dog and learned a lesson he'll never forget. This story isn't just about disrespect, it's about the resilience of service animals, the bond they share with their owners, and the surprising twist that left everyone stunned. Stick around. You won't want to miss this. Hi everyone, welcome back to Creature Clips. Today's story is one you won't believe. It's about an encounter between a motorcyclist and a blind girl's guide dog, a story that will leave you shocked, inspired, and hopefully more empathetic. Imagine relying on a loyal companion, one trained to guide and protect you in a world you can't see, only to have someone treat that companion with disrespect. For many visually impaired individuals, guide dogs are more than just animals. They're lifelines, providing freedom and safety in ways most of us can't fully grasp. This story begins on an ordinary day, but what unfolds is anything but ordinary. A motorcyclist crosses paths with a blind girl and her guide dog, mocking and even kicking the animal. What he didn't know, though, was that this wasn't just any guide dog. This was a former canine, a highly trained hero with a remarkable past, and the events that followed are sure to surprise you. In this video, we'll uncover what happened during this shocking encounter, who the people involved were, and the extraordinary history of this incredible guide dog. We'll also explore the powerful bond between guide dogs and their owners, and why these animals deserve not only respect, but admiration. By the end of this video, you'll see the world of guide dogs in a whole new light. So stay tuned, because this isn't just a story about a disrespectful act. It's a story about resilience, loyalty, and the lessons we can all learn from it. It was a typical day for Emma, a young woman who had been blind since birth. Despite her condition, she had always approached life with a sense of determination and optimism. Navigating a world that could be intimidating for someone without sight wasn't easy, but Emma had learned to rely on her most trusted companion, a guide dog named Max. They had been inseparable for 3 years, and their bond was stronger than most people could imagine. Max wasn't just her eyes in the world. He was her protector, confidant, and friend. He had given her the independence she had always dreamed of, and with him by her side, Emma could move through the world with a sense of confidence she had never thought possible. Max was no ordinary guide dog, however. He was a former K9, a highly trained working dog who had served with distinction in the police force. Before retiring, Max had been trained in everything from search and rescue missions to protecting his handlers in dangerous situations. His background made him exceptionally vigilant, calm, and capable of handling any situation that came his way. What many people didn't know was that Max's intelligence and calm demeanor were a direct result of his intense training and past experiences. Even in the face of danger, Max was always composed, ready to protect Emma from any threat that might arise. On that particular day, Emma and Max were walking down a busy street in the city. It was a sunny afternoon, and the sounds of cars and people filled the air. The sidewalk was bustling with activity, but for Emma, it was just another routine outing, with Max guiding her along as they made their way toward the park. They were accustomed to the sounds of the city, the honking of car horns, and the chatter of pedestrians. But little did they know, an unexpected encounter was about to change their day completely. As they approached a crosswalk, Max suddenly became alert, his ears pricking up and his body tense. Emma could feel the change in his behavior, and she trusted him completely. Just as they were about to cross, a motorcyclist revved his engine loudly, speeding past them at an alarming speed. The noise startled Max, causing him to instinctively position himself between Emma and the oncoming motorcyclist, his protective nature kicking in. What Emma didn't know was that this motorcyclist, who was unaware of the dog's past and training, would be the one to test Max's composure in a way neither of them had ever anticipated. The sun was bright, and the street was filled with the usual sounds of the city, a mix of car horns, the chatter of pedestrians, and the occasional screech of tires. Emma, guided by Max, had no idea that a simple walk was about to turn into a harrowing experience. As they approached the busy intersection, Max's senses were on high alert, his ears twitching at every noise. He was always careful, always aware, but there was something about the revving of the motorcycle that caused him to stiffen, his body tense with an unspoken warning. The motorcyclist had been speeding down the street, weaving in and out of traffic, when he saw Emma and Max standing at the corner of the crosswalk. To him, it was just another blind person with a dog, a common sight in the city. But what he didn't realize was that Max wasn't an ordinary dog. This wasn't just a guide dog, it was a former K9, trained to handle far more than just guiding someone through a street. But the motorcyclist didn't know that. He didn't know Max's past. To him, it was just another dog, and that, unfortunately, would lead to the horrific encounter that followed. As the motorcyclist approached, he slowed down, the sound of his engine loud enough to make the air vibrate. The man looked at Max and Emma with a smirk, amused by the sight of the dog seemingly leading the blind girl down the street. It was as if he couldn't fathom why such a regular dog would be in the position it was, guiding someone through the world. With a laugh, the man revved his engine again, taunting Max, who was now standing at attention beside Emma. "Is that your service dog, lady? Looks like just a regular mutt to me," he shouted, mocking the pair. Emma, unfazed by the comment, continued to walk confidently, with Max guiding her. She had learned long ago that ignorance was something she'd have to navigate with the same grace she used to move through the world. But this motorcyclist wasn't done. As they reached the crosswalk, the motorcyclist pulled up closer, his bike humming loudly as he slowed to a stop beside them. "What, you think that dog's special?" he jeered again, shaking his head. Without warning, he extended his foot and kicked Max harshly in the side. The impact was swift and unexpected. Max's body jolted, but he didn't react with the same aggression one might expect from a dog being attacked. Instead, Max stood perfectly still, his years of training kicking in. His muscles tensed, but he remained focused, not out of fear, but out of duty. His protective instincts took over in that moment. He needed to shield Emma, but he also knew that any aggressive response from him would escalate the situation. Emma, who had felt the jolt of Max's body and heard the kick, immediately froze. Her heart skipped a beat, the world around her suddenly feeling heavier. "Max," she whispered, feeling for his leash. When her fingers touched the cold leather, she knew immediately what had happened. Her guide dog, her protector, her partner, had just been kicked, and her body reacted with a surge of adrenaline and fury. She grabbed hold of the leash tightly and pulled Max closer to her. Max remained calm, as always, his stance unwavering. Despite the assault, he didn't lunge or growl. His years as a K9 had instilled in him the discipline not to respond aggressively unless absolutely necessary. And in that moment, he understood the situation completely. It wasn't about the kick, it was about protecting Emma, his handler, his best friend. The motorcyclist, however, seemed to expect a different reaction from Max. He had probably thought the dog would react aggressively, perhaps barking or charging at him. Instead, the silence was deafening. He looked down at Max and seemed momentarily confused by the dog's lack of response. He had expected something dramatic, a chase or a fight, but all he saw was a dog who had been trained to keep calm and protect his owner at all costs. But then, as if waking from a daze, the motorcyclist's face twisted with something else, disrespect and mockery. "What, you scared, dog?" he taunted again, revving his engine loudly as if trying to provoke a reaction. Emma's heart raced, her hands trembling as she took a few steps back, instinctively pulling Max away from the motorcyclist. She could hear the smirk in his voice, but now there was something else in her that was triggered. Not fear, but a deep, burning anger. This man had crossed a line. It wasn't just an attack on a dog. It was an attack on everything that Max stood for. everything that Emma had come to rely on. "You don't know who you're messing with," she said, her voice shaking but strong. The words came out before she even had a chance to stop them. She had no idea how the man would respond, but she couldn't just stand by and allow him to continue. "This isn't just a dog. You have no idea who you're messing with." Max, still calm, moved slightly to the side, as if positioning himself between Emma and the motorcyclist. His stance was protective, yet restrained. He was waiting for a signal from Emma. He trusted her completely, and despite everything happening around them, he knew she was in charge. At that moment, the motorcyclist seemed to realize something. The strange calmness of the dog, the way Emma spoke with such authority, it all began to register in his mind. For the first time, he looked at Max and saw something different. He didn't just see a guide dog. He saw a dog that had been through rigorous training, a dog that had a history. He might have expected a reaction from the animal, but instead, all he received was silence and stillness, traits that only someone with extraordinary discipline could exhibit. A few seconds later, a woman who had been walking behind the motorcyclist stepped forward, having witnessed the entire event. "What the hell is wrong with you? That's a service animal, you idiot!" she shouted, her face flushed with anger. "You can't just kick someone's service dog. Are you crazy?" The motorcyclist's face turned red as he glanced between the woman, Emma, and Max. He seemed at a loss for words now, the reality of what he had just done slowly sinking in. He opened his mouth to say something, but hesitated, unsure of how to justify his actions. "Get out of here," Emma finally said, her voice shaking but firm. "Leave us alone." And with that, the motorcyclist revved his engine once more and sped off, his face still red with embarrassment, or perhaps shame. But the damage was done. Max was shaken but unhurt, and Emma's heart raced as she processed the events that had just unfolded. The woman who had intervened gave her a nod of support before continuing on her way, leaving Emma standing there, holding the leash tightly. Max remained calm, his body now relaxed but alert, as if checking to make sure Emma was okay. He nudged her gently with his head, sensing the stress she was feeling. Emma crouched down and whispered softly to him, "It's okay, Max. You did great." The moment was over, but the impact of what had just occurred would stay with both of them for a long time. Emma had been reminded of something crucial. The world could be filled with people who didn't understand or respect the bond between a guide dog and its handler. But she also realized that she wasn't alone in this journey. There were people who would stand up for her and for Max, just as Max stood up for her. As the motorcyclist sped off into the distance, leaving behind the scene of his impulsive act, Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. But the truth of the moment was only beginning to unravel. While the motorcyclist may have thought he had simply kicked a regular guide dog, the reality of Max's background was far more extraordinary than anyone, especially him, could have imagined. Max wasn't just any dog. His past was one of training, service, and heroism. A story that few knew unless they took the time to look beyond the surface. Before he became Emma's guide dog, Max had a life full of adrenaline and purpose. He had been trained as a K-9 officer, serving in the police force for nearly 5 years. He had undergone rigorous training that included everything from tracking criminals to detecting explosives and even serving in high-risk rescue missions. He was no stranger to danger. He had been in situations where lives hung in the balance, where split-second decisions could mean the difference between life and death. Max had not only been a protector in those moments, but a hero. During his years with the police, Max earned numerous accolades for his work. He had participated in several high-profile cases, finding missing people, disarming bombs, and subduing dangerous criminals. His acute senses, his hearing, sense of smell, and instincts had saved lives on multiple occasions. Max was known for his unwavering focus in the field and his ability to work under intense pressure. But above all, what made him truly exceptional wasn't just his training, it was his heart. Max was driven by a deep, intrinsic loyalty to his handler and those around him. He was the kind of dog that, even in the most chaotic of situations, would put his own safety aside to protect those in danger. Eventually, after years of service, Max retired. But despite his age, he wasn't ready to stop working. He had been matched with Emma, who needed a guide dog, and their bond formed immediately. It didn't take long for Emma to realize that Max's past life was one filled with unparalleled service and devotion, traits that carried over into their daily routine together. He wasn't just her eyes in the world. He was her protector, a silent hero in every aspect of their lives. It was this background, Max's heroism, his past as a K9, his impeccable training, that the motorcyclist knew nothing about when he mocked and kicked Max earlier that day. Had he known, it's likely he wouldn't have made such a reckless decision. But as he rode away, Emma stood there in the aftermath of what had just occurred, feeling the sting of injustice, but also the reassurance that Max would always be there, no matter what. As fate would have it, the motorcyclist's journey was far from over. As he continued down the road, his mind began to replay the scene he had just left behind. He thought about the dog, how it hadn't reacted the way he expected. The dog had been calm, unfazed, and almost too disciplined. He realized something wasn't right. He could feel the weight of the moment settling on his chest. Why hadn't the dog attacked him? Why had it just stood there, unwavering? The more he thought about it, the more uneasy he became. It wasn't until he pulled over to a nearby gas station that the full truth hit him. While filling up his tank, he overheard a conversation between a passerby and a local shopkeeper. The conversation turned to the topic of guide dogs, and then to the specific dog Emma had been walking with. "Oh, I saw that dog earlier. That's Max, the retired K9, the passerby said casually. He used to work with the police. They say he's saved lives. Been involved in several high-profile cases. People don't always realize how much a retired dog like that still has to give. When they work together, it's something special." The motorcyclist's stomach sank. Max, a retired K9 officer, a hero. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had just kicked a dog with a background as extraordinary as any human's, a dog who had risked its life countless times to protect others. He had mocked and disrespected not only the dog, but also the years of service and sacrifice that Max had given. And worst of all, he had done this without even knowing who or what he was dealing with. His hand shook slightly as he finished pumping his gas. The words of the passerby echoed in his mind. He used to work with the police. Saved lives. The motorcyclist leaned against his bike, his mind racing with the weight of what he had done. He hadn't just kicked any dog. He had disrespected a living hero. He had mocked an animal who had likely faced more danger and difficulty than he ever had, and yet had still chosen to remain a faithful, devoted companion. The regret came flooding in. The sudden realization of the gravity of his actions turned his stomach, and guilt gnawed at him. What had he been thinking when he mocked Max? When he kicked him, did he even consider that Max might be a highly trained animal with the capability of doing far more than barking or defending himself aggressively? The motorcyclist felt a deep, uncomfortable shame. He couldn't believe what he had done. In the distance, the sound of Emma and Max's footsteps still echoed in his mind. He could imagine her standing there, waiting for her guide dog to lead her safely through the city. But now, he understood that Max wasn't just any guide dog. He was a hero, and the bond between him and Emma was something far more profound than he had realized. What he had mistaken for weakness or submission was actually strength in its purest form. Max had the power to defend himself and his handler, but he had chosen restraint. He had chosen to stand still and protect Emma from further conflict. The motorcyclist's mind whirled as he contemplated what he had done. In the pit of his stomach, he knew there was only one thing he could do now: apologize. He couldn't undo the wrong, but perhaps he could find a way to make things right. The days following the incident were filled with a mix of uncertainty and reflection. Emma and Max had continued their routine, as they always did, but the encounter with the motorcyclist lingered in her mind. She couldn't stop thinking about the way he had treated Max, how he had mocked and kicked a dog who was not just a companion, but a hero. The shock had worn off, but the sting of disrespect remained. The world, it seemed, wasn't always as empathetic as it should be, and in that moment, Emma felt the weight of that reality more than ever before. The motorcyclist had been left with more than just the guilt of his actions. The realization that he had kicked a retired K9, a hero who had served the police force and saved lives, had started to eat at him. The shame and regret were not easily shaken off, and as much as he tried to justify his actions to himself, he couldn't. No excuse, no matter how he framed it, seemed sufficient to erase the wrong he had done. He had disrespected not just a service animal, but a dedicated creature who had put its life on the line for others. The man wrestled with his emotions for the next couple of days, replaying the scene in his head over and over. He had been reckless, thoughtless, and arrogant, and now he realized the gravity of his actions. It didn't take long before he knew what he had to do. He needed to apologize. On the third day after the incident, the motorcyclist set out to find Emma and Max. He wasn't sure what to expect. He knew that an apology wouldn't undo what he had done, but it was the right thing to do. He had to make it right. He retraced his route, hoping to spot Emma and Max along the streets where he had seen them before. He rode through the neighborhood, his heart pounding in his chest, unsure if they would be out again. Finally, just as he was about to give up, he saw them. Emma was waiting at a corner, Max calmly sitting beside her, focused on the task at hand. Pulling up to the curb, the motorcyclist stopped and dismounted. Emma looked up in surprise, her brow furrowed. Max, too, was alert, his eyes trained on the man, who had stopped near them. I owe you an apology, the motorcyclist said, his voice filled with genuine remorse. I didn't know. I didn't realize. I shouldn't have treated Max the way I did. I was wrong. Emma's expression was unreadable for a moment. She had been bracing herself for something more along the lines of an excuse, a justification, but instead, the motorcyclist seemed to be truly sorry. She let out a breath, her eyes softening as she looked down at Max. Max, for his part, was calm, his posture relaxed as he stood beside Emma. Despite the encounter, he had remained composed, unaffected by the motorcyclist's words. He didn't need an apology. He simply needed to continue doing his job, guiding Emma through the world, just as he always did. I appreciate your apology, Emma said slowly, her voice steady. But it's not just about me and Max. It's about the respect that all service animals deserve. We're out here every day, and we face things like this more often than you might think. The motorcyclist nodded, his face red with shame. I can only imagine how many times you've had to deal with this kind of ignorance. It was wrong of me, and I'll do better. I've learned something important today. Emma smiled faintly, not expecting a grand gesture, but feeling relieved nonetheless. Thank you for saying that. We need more people to understand that service dogs like Max aren't just pets. They're partners. They're heroes. The motorcyclist nodded again, his mind now filled with the weight of his newfound understanding. He had learned the hard way, but at least he had learned. As he turned to leave, Emma added, "Take care of yourself and take care of others too." As the motorcyclist drove off, Emma stood there, reflecting on what had just happened. She had received the apology she didn't necessarily expect, but at the same time, it was a small victory. For Emma, it wasn't about seeking revenge or trying to make the motorcyclist feel guilty. What mattered most to her was making sure that the world knew the importance of service animals like Max. They were not just pets or tools. They were working partners with invaluable lives and a role that should never be dismissed or disrespected. She thought back to the first time she and Max met. At that moment, she didn't know that he would become such an integral part of her life, guiding her not just through the streets, but through some of her most challenging times. Max had been by her side for years, never once questioning the responsibility he carried. His job was never just about leading her through the world, it was about ensuring her safety, her independence, and her dignity. But that dignity was too often taken for granted. Emma knew that, as a blind person, she would have to deal with ignorance and insensitivity on a daily basis. It wasn't just about the motorcyclist, it was about the countless times others would see her with Max and dismiss him as just a dog. It was about the people who didn't understand why she couldn't simply get by without a guide dog. It was about the invisible struggles she faced and how many people seemed oblivious to them. In the quiet moments of reflection, Emma realized how much more there was to be done in raising awareness about the roles service animals play in the lives of people with disabilities. They weren't just trained to help with basic tasks. They were trained to save lives, to protect their handlers from harm, and to offer the kind of support that many could never fully comprehend. Max wasn't just her guide dog, he was her partner, her hero. He had given his years of service and loyalty to people who had needed him, and he would continue to do so for her. The day's incident was a reminder that society still had a long way to go when it came to respecting service animals and understanding their significance. The encounter with the motorcyclist may have been shocking, but it served as a catalyst for conversation. A conversation about respect for service animals, about understanding their importance, and about raising awareness about the unique bond between people with disabilities and their service animals. Service animals, especially guide dogs, are an integral part of the lives of many individuals with visual impairments. These dogs are trained to navigate through obstacles, alert their handlers to potential dangers, and provide the confidence necessary to engage in daily life. But beyond that, service dogs are companions. They are partners who provide not just physical assistance, but emotional support as well. In the United States alone, over 10,000 guide dogs are currently assisting people with visual impairments. These dogs undergo extensive training, often starting as puppies, before they are matched with their handlers. The training is grueling and takes up to 2 years. Service dogs are taught how to work in various environments, including busy streets, public transportation, and crowded spaces. They are trained to ignore distractions, respond to commands, and remain calm in stressful situations. What many people don't realize is that service dogs like Max are not just dogs. They are highly trained professionals. They are often the difference between independence and reliance, between safety and danger, and between confidence and fear. The bond between a service dog and its handler is a unique one, built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. The handler relies on the dog's instincts and training, and the dog relies on the handler for guidance, love, and support. Emma's thoughts on the incident were clear. The world needed more education about the critical role of service animals. It wasn't just about one instance of ignorance. It was about changing the mindset of society as a whole. Everyone deserved to be treated with dignity and respect, and that extended to the incredible animals who helped them lead independent lives. Throughout the video, it's crucial to keep the audience not only entertained, but also involved. When you ask questions and encourage comments, it not only increases interaction, but also builds a community around your content. Here's how to keep the engagement flowing seamlessly in your script. At the beginning of the video, it's important to immediately engage the viewer. As you introduce the story, a simple question can spark curiosity and set the tone for discussion. For instance, when you begin to talk about the motorcyclist's actions and the blind girl with her guide dog, ask your audience, have you ever witnessed something similar? Maybe someone mistreating a service animal because they didn't understand its importance? Let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your experiences. This sets the tone for the video, subtly reminding viewers that they're part of a conversation, not just passive spectators. As the story progresses, particularly during the incident when the motorcyclist mocks and kicks the dog, you can further encourage interaction by asking, what would you have done if you were in Emma's shoes? Would you have reacted differently when the motorcyclist mocked and kicked Max? Drop your thoughts below. Let's discuss how you would handle such a situation. This kind of question will prompt viewers to think critically about their actions in a similar scenario, engaging their empathy and reflection. Plus, it keeps them invested in the emotional aspects of the story. During the twist, when the motorcyclist learns the truth about Max's past as a canine officer, ask, can you imagine what the motorcyclist must have felt when he realized Max wasn't just a guide dog, but a retired canine officer who had served in dangerous situations? What would you have said to him if you were Emma, confronting him with this new information? This question invites the viewers to place themselves in Emma's position and reflect on the weight of the situation. It pushes them to consider not just the motorcyclist's reaction, but also the impact of the story on them personally. Such questions spark empathy and provoke deep thoughts about responsibility, respect, and the bond between animals and humans. By the time the video reaches the aftermath, where the motorcyclist apologizes, the audience is more likely to have formed opinions about the motorcyclist's actions. At this point, asking, do you think the motorcyclist's apology was enough? Was it sincere? What do you think should have happened afterward? Should there have been any consequences for his actions? Will drive further engagement. This question invites viewers to weigh in on the emotional side of the situation and share their thoughts on forgiveness, consequences, and personal responsibility. It also encourages them to share their views on what proper accountability looks like in cases like this. Throughout the video, a broader message is interwoven about the importance of service animals. At this juncture, when the message about respect for service animals is underscored, it's critical to encourage discussion about the larger issue. Ask, as we saw in this story, service animals like Max play a vital role in the lives of people with disabilities. But how many people actually understand the significance of their roles? What do you think needs to be done to raise more awareness and respect for service animals? Should there be more education about their importance? This question invites your audience to reflect on the broader societal issue. It gives them the opportunity to voice their thoughts on education, advocacy, and how we, as a community, can do better in respecting these highly trained animals and their handlers. As you wrap up the video, keep the interaction going. Offer a final thought-provoking question, such as, what would you do if you witnessed someone mistreating a service animal? How do you think we can create a world where animals like Max are treated with the respect they deserve? This question rounds off the video nicely, leaving viewers with something to think about. It also invites them to feel empowered to speak up and take action when they encounter situations like the one portrayed. Remember, engagement isn't just about asking questions. It's about creating a space where people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and opinions. Responding to comments can further boost this engagement. By acknowledging and interacting with your viewers, you create a two-way dialogue, making them feel heard and valued. It also keeps them coming back for more, as they'll feel like part of a community that discusses important issues together. Encouraging viewers to share their personal experiences or stories related to service animals can help foster a sense of belonging. You can also invite them to share their thoughts on the greater message of respect for service animals. By doing this, you not only encourage further interaction, but also provide value to your viewers by making them feel like active participants in the conversation. Incorporating interactive elements throughout the video makes it feel less like a monologue and more like a dialogue between you and your viewers. For example, asking questions like, have you ever seen someone unaware of the role of a service animal? Or, how do you think we can encourage respect for guide dogs? Directly invites them to be a part of the video's narrative. It opens up a space for them to reflect on the issues at hand and share their insights, which in turn can enrich the overall discussion. Even more so, as the video addresses the emotional aspects of the story. Max's past as a canine, the motorcyclist's regret, and Emma's thoughts. Viewers may feel moved to share their own personal stories of empathy, or moments where they've seen a service animal's incredible impact. You might even encourage them to post pictures of their own service animals, showing their respect and appreciation for these unsung heroes. Asking viewers to comment on specific elements of the story, like the motorcyclist's actions or the emotional resilience of Max, keeps them actively thinking about the narrative, and encourages them to process it in a meaningful way. People often enjoy having their opinions valued, so by encouraging thoughtful interaction, you're cultivating a community where people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts, leading to more meaningful conversations and connections. Ultimately, engaging with your audience throughout the video will make the content feel more personal, relatable, and impactful. It also increases the chances of more comments, shares, and interactions, which boosts the visibility of your video and helps it reach a larger audience. By asking thought-provoking questions and inviting feedback, you turn a passive viewing experience into an active dialogue, making your video not just a story, but a conversation. As we wrap up, this story reminds us of the incredible role service animals like Max play in the lives of people with disabilities. Their dedication, training, and protective instincts go far beyond what we may often realize. Max wasn't just a guide dog, he was a hero, and his story shows us why service animals deserve respect, understanding, and protection from all of us. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's spread the message of respect for service animals far and wide. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our other videos for more inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.